Hi, welcome to Get Serious. Today, have another update on utilizing AI within your business. Almost every single day that passes, there's just another kind of eye-opening experience, some larger than others, but generally it's just a upward facing arrow in terms of just potential opportunity and actually realized opportunity as myself and my team continue to utilize these tools. So as we near the end of Callan's Accelerate to Automate course, we had just built out this money coach. So I spent some extra time like really deep diving, making sure we have the right info. And the name kind of gives it away. It's just, accounting for, whatever the status of your financials within your business and trying to kind of coach you along the path for breaking through boundaries and figuring out what your actual revenue goals should be and could be achieved if you really push yourself, especially with a 10x mentality over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, up to 5 years or beyond. And also approaching it from like a psychological perspective too. Not just the raw numbers, but how you think about money and past history of your experience with money or what type of environment you grew up in too, because that all comes into play when we actually make business decisions. So I spent a whole ton of time on this. That's the thing, is like kind of realizing there's a lot of overlap with some of these AI projects, like that Sage Mode I talked about the other day that I'm still building out. Like I'll probably want to include a lot of this info from the Money Coach into Sage Mode. They're a bit different, more overarching strategic versus very money oriented CFO/therapist kind of. But I think a lot of the info or the knowledge within both are probably relevant to each other. So I'm going to play around with that. But as I was wrapping up this kind of initial experiment with the Money Coach and just trying to set some revenue goals, and it took me a bit longer because I'm trying to do both Serious Land Capital and Land Pricer and orient what the potential is for both of those. Like I imagine SLC is that's going to be kind of the primary driver. It's just more capital intensive, but I really view the two businesses as intertwined because like inevitably I'll need a tool like Land Pricer to take SLC to the highest level possible anyway. Like I just don't want to be continuing to have like an art associated to underwriting deals and just depending more on my mood or energy to figure out what all the right comps are, or my team members. Doesn't matter whether I'm the one doing it or not. Like ultimately that's going to be a bottleneck that we have to break through. So that software has to be created ultimately, whether they're fully separate businesses or not. Like I was just trying to work that through, and just talking to this AI money coach, it would just help really reorient strategically on how I should be thinking about Land Pricer being an accelerant to SLC's growth to, 10, 15, $50 million top line business over time. And whether that is its core function, or the ability to bring it to the masses through B2C or potentially B2B partnerships, like that's an additive value. But like ultimately that core piece of like, okay, I need a piece of software to build out SLC to its top potential, that will kind of keep the North Star oriented for both companies on the level of solution that is required, regardless of what each revenue stream might appear to be separately. And the AI kind of gave me different legal frameworks on how to potentially navigate that as well, being in different LLCs. Obviously, I own both of them. So that was kind of uplifting, as that's something I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. And then, especially accounting for, we have this ambitious growth for Serious Land Capital. And, and I was answering some of these questions about the revenue goals to the AI. Like I almost found myself getting a bit defensive. It kept saying, hey, here's the brutal truth. Like, you're being a bit too conservative here. And like, you have this capital on hand. Like, why aren't you using, like, if this is really your goal, why aren't you going to be pushing in this direction? And it was just asking really savvy questions that Certainly, yeah, you can get from a good human mentor or another business coach, but like they're not all always available at any given time, or you're not necessarily going out of your way to be asking these routine questions. And most of the time, it's just you in your head trying to work through things, or maybe you have some partners or employees in the business, but that's kind of an echo chamber as well here, especially if you have more charismatic personality, which I would include myself in that sense, and you can kind of just steamroll over other ideas and just rationalize through your thought process. But having these really thoughtful questions being asked and just really challenging my assumptions to the point where like I was almost starting to sweat a little bit in terms of like, this is kind of tough to answer here, and maybe I'm not being as open-minded as I could be, or as confident with my decision making as the numbers would seem to suggest we have the capability of doing. And so that was just an extremely helpful exercise um, that is probably AI's biggest gift at the moment, is just serving as a potential thought partner. I know again, like 95% plus of people who've ever used AI are still using AI, or like kind of treating it as a souped up Google search, which is just doesn't even scratch the surface of its potential here. But yeah, when you can really get into these thought partner conversations that have the proper context, especially about your life and your business, like it's truly transformational, especially because again, I'm using whisper flow, and so I'm just talking natural language, not wasting time typing. It's just a back and forth to really sort through thoughts, and just the way it can, quickly kind of orient numbers as well too, just running through, okay, here's some revenue projections, here's like typical SaaS churn rates and stuff, like a lot of outside knowledge that I wasn't necessarily having on hand, or I was just pushing off. I'll get to that later on. It's like, okay, now I can start building some of this stuff in, and what actually might be realistic, or, like kind of like conservative, middle of the road to kind of aggressive targets for revenue across both of the businesses, and giving me some different ideas on how to approach each. So yeah, just again, kind of stunning conversations in terms of both the level of the quality of feedback that I was getting and improving my own decision making, as well as just again, it was just making me uncomfortable to answer these questions. Like these are just tough, deep questions, and I orient my AI like telling me like, hey, I'm a high performing entrepreneur, just give me the brutal truth, like don't hold back on this. Like I prefer that type of response there. And that's the thing, like a lot of, even if you ask that of people, we're social creatures, like usually, unless you like really know someone, and sometimes even then it can, you want to be even more careful on how you say things. But uh, how many times do you actually have a face-to-face or even a phone conversation where somebody is saying like, here's the brutal truth about it, like you're just, you got to change your mindset. Like it's pretty rare. I feel like I'm around people who are pretty honest and forthcoming with the way that they speak, but like those type of conversations certainly don't happen every day, at least not in my life. Even in my own marriage, like you'd think your closest partners, I mean, sometimes we'll have more serious conversations, probably more often than a lot of couples, just because we've built that into our cadence. But they're rarely comfortable, right? Like none of these, you really rarely like go out of your way to get into them. And so sometimes I think even having this AI where it's like, okay, I can step away from the conversation anytime, and I don't have like another face kind of judging me at the same time too. Like it's just maybe a little bit easier to, and again, I just don't think that many people are using stuff like this. We don't know the numbers behind ChatGPT, for instance, but I know they did a recent study on Claude, and everybody's worried, oh, like therapists, everybody's going to use an AI therapist, but it's like sub 0.5% of all conversations on the platform, maybe even less than that. But yeah, I mean, it's super small, are actually using it for that primary objective. So there's still a lot of room for us all to adapt in our own usage and determine what feels best for us at any given time. But I'm continue to be bought in, just because, like, again, you got to do a lot of work with the context and the knowledge. Like you can't, I mean, it can be helpful just going to the AI and like just kind of working through things, but if it doesn't know your situation, like the quality of the results are just not going to be nearly as good. So like that's the moat that you have to build and kind of cross over. It can take hours of work to properly answer all these questions and pull all the relevant files and data that are going to inform the decisions. But, that's what it takes to get a proper thought partner, right? So just wanted to share that there. Just give it a shot if you haven't already. Like these are truly transformational conversations. I'm going to be returning to this often. With that in mind, seriousland.capital for any of your funding needs, zero cost review of your land deals, Land Daily Diligence Facebook group, and landpricer.ai for the most reliable land funding tool or land pricing tool on the market. Subscribe and share. I will talk to you all next time. Bye.